Hi, my name is Emily or La Movie Mija. I'm a part-time filmmaker, full-time movie lover. Whoa, I'm Emily or La Movie Mija, part-time filmmaker, full-time movie lover, and I'm actually traveling right now, not the space kind, and I'm not in my usual space. Or did we just jump timelines? Either way, this will have to do, and today I want to talk to you about Deadpool and Wolverine. Yes, I am currently traveling, so I'm not in my usual setup, but I just couldn't pass up an opportunity to talk about this movie with you. Someone asked me recently if I reviewed Marvel movies, so here we are. Now, something I haven't talked about on this channel is that I am a fan of comics and superhero movies in general. Batman was my personal gateway comic, and X-Men 97, the animated series, is my favorite superhero release in recent memory. I completed a watch through of the entire MCU in chronological order back in 2020, and except for a few of the shows, I've seen everything that's come out since. And if you were to ask me, my favorite superhero movies, probably X-Men Days of Future Past and X-Men First Class, and Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn movie. But we're not here to talk about all of that. There's a lot more I can nerd out about, but I just wanted to set some ground rules for this video. In case it reaches any weird parts of the internet, I am not an expert. I am a fan, and I won't be tolerating any weird gatekeeping, any rude comments, or any blatant disrespect. We're talking movies on this channel. We're not entering a battle of wits. With that said, this video will be mostly spoiler free, but I will want to nerd out with you about some of the things in this movie, so there will be a spoilery bit at the end, but I'll give you plenty of warning before we get there. Let's talk Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool's peaceful existence comes crashing down when the Time Variance Authority recruits him to help safeguard the multiverse. He soon unites with his would-be pal Wolverine to complete the mission and save his world from an existential threat. The film is directed by Shawn Levy and stars Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, Emma Corrin, Morena Boccarin, Leslie Uggams, Matthew Macfadyen, as well as Hugh Jackman's beautifully crafted shoulders and abs.
I am soaking wet right now.
And many more. But let's start with the wins of this movie. I know Deadpool has top billing in this movie, but this is Wolverine's movie. It is a blessing and a curse for this movie to have him in it because he is so good as Wolverine, and the X-Men baggage that he carries is just massive. And it's hard to balance a double billing when you're also trying to tell a Deadpool story, and Hugh Jackman is over here just being the perfect embodiment of Logan. Like, fans of other X-Men characters could only ever dream of having such a perfect casting. And even though 7 whole years have passed since he last played the titular mutant, he still embodies him perfectly in this movie. From the gruff line reads to the physicality, oh my god, he looked so good. I also really love X-Men and the X-Men movies, and I enjoyed all the little nuggets of shout-outs throughout this film. There's a few cameos and characters that really got me in the nostalgia gut. I felt myself tearing up just seeing them again. Thank you, Ryan Reynolds, for making that happen. I'm not sure if this movie ultimately lands as a celebration or a eulogy of those Fox films, but it really did make me want to rewatch them. This movie is also really great when the characters get a little zany. I want to shout out the performances by Emma Corrin and Matthew Macfadyen. They are standout performances. They are so funny, so weird and offbeat. Their freak definitely matches Deadpool's freak. Their performances are surprising and comical, and they help differentiate this movie from its contemporaries. Now, as a love letter to the 20th century Fox films, I think this movie feels a little muddled. There's a rip in the tone joke continuum where it feels like this movie doesn't know if it wants to impress the Marvel higher-ups or if it wants to give a big finger to the corporate overlords. Seriously, I watched the whole movie and I'm not sure where it lands. There's a few awesome moments that happen in this movie, don't get me wrong. However, this movie feels so disconnected from the Deadpool predecessors. It burns for me to say this because I don't like being a movie hater. It's not fun to hate movies and not enjoy the time you had with them. But I did have big expectations going into this movie, and I just didn't know where this movie wanted me to land as far as hating or loving what came before it. There's a few awesome moments that give me glimpses of what could have been, and in those moments I am really excited about the idea of rewatching this movie. But for the most part, this movie felt really disconnected from its Deadpool predecessors. because it was trying so hard to impress Marvel Big Brother. The meta commentary alone felt overproduced and over serious. The little that we actually got, it's like I could almost feel the highlighters and the red lines through the script of all the Disney execs that were babysitting this script. And while watching this movie, I couldn't help but feel a little awkward sitting in that tension between a movie that's trying to service Deadpool fans and a movie that's trying to serve up the MCU machine. The MCU machine that is desperately trying to win back fans after they started fumbling the multiverse bag. With that said, this movie is still a departure from your run-of-the-mill, family-friendly Marvel movie. They do a well enough job of that, even from the gory opening scenes, blood splattering across the white snow. So cool. And there are a lot of sexual innuendos. So yes, you can expect the same lovable, foul-mouthed, fourth wall breaking, ultraviolet antics we've come to love. But the difference in this movie is palpable, especially if you do what I did and rewatch Deadpool 1 and 2 right before seeing it.
I don't know much about this Cable fella, but I guarantee he hasn't killed as many people as Melanoma has.
This is true of the overall tone that I've already talked about, but it's also true of the action sequences. And in a superhero action movie, that sucks. The action in this movie just fell flat for me. I got lost in what I like to call the action sauce. Chances are you're pretty familiar with what I'm talking about when I say action sauce. Action sauce is like the overcompensation of a director to heighten the stakes of a scene or help build the tension of a scene by resorting to antics like shaky cam or having the camera go wild, resulting in the audience kind of getting lost and not being able to follow the action through like carefully choreographed camera placements. Director Shawn Levy has quite the resume, but action is notably missing, and that was heavily felt watching this movie. Now, there's already so many theories floating around about the trajectory of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and where it goes from here. Depending on which theory you adhere to, this could retroactively make one's impression of the movie more or less successful. However, regardless of where you think this will lead the larger MCU, the fact that this movie is an entry to a larger saga diminishes its credibility as a Deadpool sequel and as a standalone film. And that's the rub of the multiverse. Having to have so much backstory baked in, having so much exposition being forced into our faces, it's really hard to then just sit back and relax and be taken on a journey because you have to recall so many facts from other movies. And this movie is losing its identity because it's now in service of helping you remember past movies, and in the act of trying to recollect all of that information as it's, being presented to you as you're seeing different cameos or different flashbacks, you're no longer in this movie. You're now just off thinking about all the other movies that came before it. And in that way, my brain starts to feel exhausted and I no longer feel like I'm having fun watching a movie. I feel like I'm taking a multiple choice standardized test. So unfortunately, this film collapses under the pressure to tell a cohesive story, explain the multiverse mess, give us a Deadpool movie, give us a Wolverine movie, make us care about the small stakes, Deadpool's midlife crisis, and large stakes, the possible end of the universe, of course. By trying to do it all, this movie, for the most part, doesn't manage to stick the landing with any of its lengthy to-do list. The emotional weight that mixes so well with the snark of the first two movies is nowhere to be found in this one. And what little of it does shine through, that's brought on by Wolverine. That's brought on by the mere mention of Professor Charles Xavier's name, by the mere mention of the X-Men. Deadpool's desire to be part of something greater, larger than himself is just a distant memory by the time we get to the third act. And if you are a fan of the Deadpool movies, you might be saddened to know that we don't get to spend a lot of time with those same regular characters like Vanessa, Dopinder, Teenage Negasonic Warhead, Colossus, Yukio, Big Al. I could always use more Leslie Uggams in a movie. The answer is not less Leslie Uggams. I need more Leslie Uggams in the movie. And it's gonna burn for me to say this. It's coming from the heart. This movie was just okay. And it's really unfortunate because as far as making studio and IP mergers cinematic, this movie and Spider-Man No Way Home, I think, are the most applicable use cases for a multiversal story. A movie that explores the meta commentary about midlife crises and feeling forgotten in multiverse mayhem could have been the best to do it, but Deadpool and Wolverine just didn't. A I'm sorry, I don't want to be a hater, but I was really excited for this one. Overall, does this save the MCU? No. It hurts to say this, but I think the film just doesn't live up to the expectations that Deadpool is Marvel Jesus. It's not a pretty film to look at. The jokes are inconsistent, and all of the emotional meat occurs outside of the story we actually get. If you are a fan of Deadpool, this will be slightly disappointing. But if you are a fan of Hugh Jackman, and if you're a fan of the X-Men and the 20th Century Fox superheroes, then there's just some beautiful and heartfelt nuggets and moments to enjoy. If you were to ask me if you should see this in theaters, I'd say yes, and that's just because this movie is best served with all of those wonderful surprises intact. And getting those spoiled for you would make your trip to the movies just okay. Alright, so now this is the part of the video where I want to talk spoilers, just things that I got really excited to see, some cameos, some characters, like just things that are absolutely going to ruin the big surprises for you. So if you haven't watched the movie, this is your spoiler warning. Now, this movie had a unique opportunity to bring back certain characters from other properties and IPs, and so I'm really interested to know what you thought about their selection of these characters. Starting with Elektra, I think it's probably just like the funniest inclusion. Like, I can't imagine Ben Affleck like coming on to do this project, honestly, and like since then he's been Batman, so he has like other things that are associated with him. So I think it's like most fitting to have people who are like the marginalized superheroes get a chance at redemption. And knowing that Elektra's movie is just so critically panned, I think that makes it even better to have her featured in this movie. And I laughed so loud in the movie theater when she had that dig at Ben Affleck and she mentioned that he died and they were like, "We're sorry," and she's like, The gall. It was so cold and actually so funny because they are real life ex-husband and wife. So there's some added tension there, but I really love the energy. Then we have Blade. Honestly, I think that maybe his casting was in response to this like rumored beef between Wesley Snipes and Ryan Reynolds, and maybe they just wanted to squash it. And Ryan Reynolds was in Blade Trinity, so they had that connection there. So that's a fun like roundabout way to show not only like honoring Wesley Snipes' Blade, knowing that we are on the cusp of possibly getting a Mahershala Ali Blade. Who knows? This movie doesn't seem to think so. But also honoring like Ryan Reynolds' long-standing career within superhero movies. Then we had X-23, and I about cried when I saw her. Oh my gosh. I'd only seen Logan maybe 3 years ago for the first time. So in my head, she was still a baby. She was still little. And seeing her like that, I lost it. And then they didn't need to put the glasses on her. She didn't need to. She didn't need to do all that. But she did, and it rocked. And then we have the most exciting and heartbreaking character to be on screen, Channing Tatum's Gambit. First of all, I'll just say it. I love the accent. I think he nailed it. Maybe I just watched a lot of videos in patois, or I don't know. I did study French at some point, but I could understand him. I understood his accent and what he was saying for the most part. And I thought it was really funny just how much Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool could not understand him. And Channing Tatum just went for it. And knowing that he's been trying to have this live action appearance as Gambit since 2006. He was rumored to be like, he was cast as Gambit in one of the original X-Men movies, and then they cut his part and like, you know, back and forth, scheduling conflicts. Like, it just never happened. And when the merger happened between Sony and Marvel and all that went down, they kind of just like threw it into the void. And it is really a touching testament to his passion for this character to see him get to play it on the big screen. And if you've seen X-Men 97, then you know. I don't want to ruin it for you, but if you've seen it, you know that this was a big year for Gambit, and it was really nice to see this live action version. I thought the costume was a little silly, but it was like, it looked like Gambit, and he had the cards lit up. They lit up and they looked so cool, and he has not a lot of like action. We don't get a lot of him fighting, but the action fighting we do see him, you know, Channing Tatum's dancer background comes into play, and it was just so cool. And honestly, I would rewatch the movie for that. Then there was the side scroll fight scene through that like New York City lot. It was such a cool concept. I really enjoyed the little shout out to the side scroll. Felt like I was playing like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. However, I did think the CGI was just a little wonky. It did feel a little sus at times. Like I wasn't sure if they put their best foot into that fight scene, and I think they could have done a little bit better job smoothing it out. I think they were mostly trying to show off all the different types of Deadpools, which was fun, but I think they'd already did that when they had a lot of close-ups, when they were like slowly walking to the fight. Like we didn't really need to see all the slowed down motion. I don't know. I love the idea. The execution was just okay. That brings me to like a little nit I have with this movie. I mentioned that it was kind of dull to look at, and I mean like the set designs were just kind of blah. I understand that they're in the void, like the desert landscape. I get it. But like we've seen desert done so beautifully this year between Furiosa and Dune Part 2. Like they could have made the desert look alluring at least, or make the void look more terrifying, or I don't know. I guess tonally I just didn't really care for it. It felt really empty. I get it, it's the void, but you know what I mean? It just felt like for a movie, if you're going to spend so much time in the void, let it have some character. Let it be a nightmare. Like, let it be this creepy liminal space. But no, it was just kind of a blank desert. And that NYC street that they're constantly on, where the sewer to the TVA station is, and where Deadpool and Wolverine had the showdown with all the other Deadpools, it was just weird that we were there so often. Felt like we were on the backlot for most of this movie. Okay, what is everyone's thoughts on Wolverine's costume? I about shed a tear. I'm gonna cry right now. Honestly, I've heard some people say that it didn't look that great, but you know what? I don't care. I think at that point there's just so much love and like excitement that I have for Hugh Jackman getting to like put a different period at the end of, I guess, what was an ellipses of his career as Wolverine. Now this is like a solid period, being able to have that like moment. It was just so cool. I got really excited. I felt like a kid in that moment. And then we had Calverine. Henry Cavill. Wow. I mean, wow. Speaking of reasons to go rewatch that movie. Also, this is really small, but I just rewatched Back to the Future. I rewatch that movie every couple of years. And of course, The Power of Love is like the song that plays over the opening, and it's like a song that I associate with time travel. So I thought it was really on brand for them to have that song play while Deadpool was multiverse jumping, trying to find the Wolverine that he needed to replace his Wolverine. So that was a cool little detail. I think that overall the soundtrack to this movie was a little much. A lot of needle drops. They were just a little too overused, like they lost their impact, but I feel like because that one was more close to the beginning of the film, that it had more of an impact on me. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine. I want to know what you thought about the movie, what your favorite cameos or Easter eggs were. Where do you think Deadpool lands as far as being someone trying to impress Marvel or someone trying to stand out above the status quo? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!